Kia ora everyone, welcome. My name's Grant. I am from Prosper, so we're providing the technology and support for this Diversity Careers Super Fair. So I've got a bit of an all-star cast online for today's panel session. So just to recap, the panel session will be running from 3 till 3:30. Because we're starting a couple of minutes late, we may go over. We'll see how we go for time. And see how much engagement is in the student chat as well. But like I mentioned, I've got a bit of an all-star cast per se. So I've got Sam from Unitec, Guillermo from Diversity Works New Zealand, and Sarah Mitchell as well from B Lab. So here everyone, welcome. Hope you're all well. Maybe I can throw to maybe to Sarah to start. If you want to quickly introduce yourself, share a little bit more about B Lab and what you guys do, and then we'll roll from there.
Great. Thanks, Grant, and thanks for inviting B Lab to be part of this exciting employment initiative. So kia ora, everybody, and really nice for you to give some time up to us today. So B Lab, we're a social enterprise. We've been around for 10 years, and we work with businesses and organisations to reduce barriers to employment and to physical environments so that people can thrive and be the best that they can be. And so I work on the employment program, and specifically with the internship program, where we support either undergraduates or graduates into fully funded 12-week internship placements in an area that's relevant to where they actually study. 1 in 4 New Zealanders identify with an access need, and so we're working to broker and to break down those barriers between the access citizen or somebody with a long-term health condition and disability, and really launch their career.
Amazing. Thanks, Sarah. And I've got a bunch of questions for yourself as well, in terms of how you support students as well, but we'll dive into that in a little bit. What about yourself, Sam? Do you want to introduce yourself and share a little bit more about I know you wear a few different hats at Unitec and Temple Kinga as well, but do you want to share a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. E nā mana, e nā waka, e nā reo, e raurangatira mā. Ko taku mahi ki te whare takiura o Manukau me te wānanga o Wairaka, ko te DC Pacifica Partnerships and Support, ko Pesta Sam ahau, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. I just wanted to greet you in one of our official languages. This is Te Wiki o Te Reo Māori. It's Māori Language Week, so I wanted to greet you all in Māori. Look, I work for both MIT and Unitec. What we do is we help people reach their goals, their aspirations through educational pursuits. And it's predominantly vocational education. So we provide skills, training, educational programs, including degrees, diplomas, and certificates. And it's across a wide range of different areas, including health, counselling, maritime, architecture, trades, engineering, building, and construction. So quite a wide breadth of learning opportunities. We have over 1,600 staff, probably about just over 25,000 learners, not just here, but also online, of course. Over the past few weeks, much of our learning has been done online. So yeah, I'm the Deputy Chief Executive for Pacifica Partnership Support. I handle enrollments, marketing, PR and comms, but one of the things that we do focus on in terms of our staff and our learners is that we promote the diversity of both our learners and our staff. We have so many nationalities, ethnicities and backgrounds, people from different walks of life. We welcome them all. We promote their difference, their diversity, and we promote their skills and their learning, in order for them to go on and get great jobs. And I know that's what our learners online are looking for. Thank you.
Kapai, thanks, Sam. And what about yourself, Guillermo? Do you want to introduce yourself to the students that are online?
Thank you, Grant. Kia ora, everyone. My name is Guillermo Morello, and I am Head of Research and Innovation at Diversity Works New Zealand. For those of you who are not familiar with Diversity Works New Zealand, we're not a fancy consultancy, but the national body for workplace diversity and inclusion in Aotearoa. We have been around for almost 30 years, and we were created at the moment in the history of the world and the history of New Zealand, where there was a huge discussion about how to do diversity and inclusion. And at that time, there was this discussion about whether we should do quotas or we should do something else. The UK, the United States were doing a lot in terms of affirmative action. And here what the government did at that time said, like, what we're going to do is we're going to create a trust. We, public sector, we're going to put money into that trust. Private sector, we expect you to put money into that trust as well. And with that money, we're going to work with everyone to educate organizations, big and small, around the country to do diversity and inclusion well and to do well because of it. We have been doing that for over 30 years. And because the way in which we were created, that means that we work basically with everyone in town, big organizations like Air New Zealand, Vodafone, Fonterra, all of them are members of Diversity Works New Zealand, but we also work with really small organizations like a collective of farmers or a manufacturing plant in Hamilton, and we help them all to actually be more sensitive to the needs of an ever-changing Aotearoa New Zealand. And it is pretty much work in progress. I think it's something that there is always an opportunity to improve, but I think we are doing pretty well.
Amazing, thanks, Guillermo. As I said, got a bit of an Orc-Star cast online. So students that are online, please feel free to, I can see that there's a few that have started to say kia ora in the chat. So kapai, keep that attitude up. And please start to feel free to start sharing some questions as well. And I'll play moderator per se for the panel. But a couple of questions from my end, and Sarah, I might actually loop back to yourself actually. When students, if you could share to the students that are online, any tips and tricks for students when they start looking for work, especially if they've got accessibility need or whatnot, can you talk through that a little bit? Like what to look out for and yeah.
Absolutely. So it doesn't matter whether you're 21 or 51, looking for a job is exciting, but it's daunting. And so I think what's really good is to have a clear idea of what industry you want to go into and what kind of job. I'm constantly surprised at how students may have done a 3 or a 4 year degree and yet have had very little support around what they're actually going to do at the end of the degree. So start to not only look at your end goal, but also where you think your passion is and where you're going to fit in. And you can do that by talking to your academic supervisors, by talking to your lecturers, by talking to people that know you as well, your whānau, your friends, and to really, really think about where your passion lies. Once you start to identify that, then maybe start to do a little bit of exploring online, looking at Seek, putting some searches in as to, okay, if you're doing say surveying, okay, what kind of companies offer surveying, and where might I start? So you don't want to be too narrow, but also it's not helpful if you're too generalist as well, because then that becomes quite overwhelming. So try and give yourself an opportunity to know where you think you want to fit, and then once you start looking at those opportunities, that will actually start to really focus your attention. Make sure you've got a CV that is that's really up to date. Your personal statement is the most important thing. Don't talk about your access need, because you don't tell them how much you weigh or how tall you are. That just happens to be who you are and part of you. Don't make that your focus. And then really also try and put together a really brief bio so that you can see where your point of difference is and what you can offer to an organisation. So my big point would be, don't focus on your disability or your health condition, your access need. Focus on where your strengths lie and what you can offer to the organisation.
Love that. Amazing advice. What about yourself, Sam? Any tips and tricks from your end in terms of how students can even start searching for work and landing the job of their dreams?
Yeah, look, Sarah covered it off pretty much, quite a wide range there. What I would add, I suppose, is, that everyone's unique. Everyone has value, and to bring to any organisation. But I would, try and choose organisations that match your values. Who you are, what you stand for. You can find a lot of that online and research the different types of organisations that are out there. In other words, do the research, choose wisely. And I think, when you're, when you do get through that first phase of making applications with personal statements, bios, is to be yourself. Just be yourself, be confident in who you are, your background. Employers now more and more value, diversity. They value the fact that, people bring different perspectives, different backgrounds. Personally, I like a bit of diversity around the table because it helps you make better decisions. And I think you can get a higher performing organisations because of the people that are part of that organisation. And certainly at Unitec and MIT, we have quite a diverse. Not just our student base is diverse, but our the employees that we hire are diverse in terms of their backgrounds, and that makes for a really exciting place to work at.
Amazing, really well put. What about yourself, Guillermo? Anything else to tie off on that thread in terms of how students can start researching and start applying for work?
Very similar to what Sarah and Sam already mentioned. I do believe that organizations these days, at least the ones working with us, which are, I have to say, a very big number of New Zealand organizations, they really are focusing on getting more diversity into their teams. And this is not just random. It has been demonstrated that this comes with very, very good and positive outcomes. So I totally agree with Sarah. Do not overplay certain aspects of yourself that may put you in trouble. But if there are areas that you consider are part of your strengths and they have been shaped from the unique perspective of diversity, and you can actually add that or turn that into a strength for the organization you want to work for, use that to your advantage and actually tell people, this is how my vision or my view of the world can help you in terms of problem solving, decision making, in terms of challenging the status quo, because we know that organizations are actually very open these days to listen to these types of statements from candidates when they apply.
And just pulling on that thread, what are some of those positive outcomes that you speak of? I know that you work at, so Guillermo, if you could speak to maybe like the likes of Air New Zealand and these employers that you work with and partner with to help support them in the diversity space. What do those successful outcomes look like?
Well, there are three types of outcomes that we always talk about when it comes to diversity and inclusion. First, we have societal outcomes. Diversity is the right thing to do. When we do it, we help organizations, we help our country in terms of having social equity, in terms of having a better social cohesion, but also this notion of co-production that is becoming more and more common. The idea that when organizations mirror the populations they serve or their customer base, those populations are going to feel more inclined to work alongside them, to buy their products, to endorse their initiatives, which is very important. And that's always the first layer. But if you think this is way too kumbaya, let's hold hands and sing together, there is a second layer that is more pragmatical, and it has to do with what we call productivity outcomes. When we have a diverse workforce, it has been proven that you increase innovation. That's the number one. You cannot have innovation in a company if everyone looks the same, thinks the same, and behaves in the same way. The second one is motivation. Normally, organizations doing diversity and inclusion well have happier workers, and that has been demonstrated in a plethora of studies. And finally, we have a particular stream in diversity and inclusion research called the informational perspective. Diversity and inclusion improve problem solving and decision making, because the wider and the broader your inventory or your pool of diverse talent is, also the broader and wider your inventory of ways of seeing and solving problems is going to be. And finally, we always say, if I have not convinced you yet, this is the only way to do, because when you do it right, you can be proactive and ride the force of change beforehand, and that can help you project better and adapt to an ever-changing society more rapidly. So there's a lot of positive outcomes in diversity.
Yeah. At Unitec, we have an initiative called ICME, and ICME is about connection between our learners and the people that work at Unitec, and this works not just for an educational institute, but for any organisation in a multicultural society that we have here in New Zealand. Guillermo talked about having the productivity, the innovation, the motivation. We've talked about values and that the connection, to community and to nationhood. The people that we serve in terms of our customers, the people that come through the doors, the people that buy the products and services of organisations. If the workforce reflects, the people that we serve, I think you get that connection, and I think you do get productivity, you get performance, and you come back, you get better decision making. So while both government and non-government institutions are about there's certainly corporate responsibility, there's also social and equity arguments for having more diverse workforces. And I think we've still got a way to go in this country, but I think to a large extent organisations understand this. I think they need to adhere to this, and that's why I recognise the work of both Sarah and Guillermo to promote the rationale and the reasoning behind having a better and more diverse workforce.
I'd just like to endorse that as well. If a business has a homogeneous workforce, how can they possibly meet the demands and the needs of their customers and their clients? Because everybody is different, and so therefore ultimately, particularly for businesses who are driven by profit, if they don't actually reflect in their workforce the type of customers and clients they have, their profitability is really going to be influenced, because they're not actually going to be correctly targeting the end user. So it's really important. And also what we do know is with diversity, and if I speak specifically into the disability employee, often you have got people who are far more resilient and great problem solvers. 2 skills that employers and innovative, 3 skills that employers in the 21st century are absolutely crying out for.
100%. I was speaking with an employer last week about this, and they were saying that and I asked the question, why do you recruit students who have got, from different backgrounds, diversity, areas and focus areas and that? And they said, Grant, especially like students with a disability, for example, we're actually looking for people who've got a different superpower that they can bring to the table. And I thought that was a really neat way of articulating it, that everyone's got, as you said, Sarah, different strengths and learning opportunities and that. But a lot of the time people will have a different superpower that they'll bring to the table, and different backgrounds, initiatives, and way of thinking as well. So, Sarah, I've got a couple of questions that are flying through the chat, and one was there's a couple for you actually. And please, for students online, feel free to jump into the chat and continue asking questions. As I said, I've got a few preset questions, but I'm sure the panel want to dive in and answer your questions as well and what's on your mind. So this was coming from an anonymous attendee. So this is directed to yourself, Sarah. As a continuation of my access needs question, is there anything I can do if those needs are not being met? Can you walk through that?
Sure. So if we're talking specifically about employment, my answer to that would really be, if you're in an organization, or you're looking to go into an organization, and your needs aren't being met, or it appears that they're not going to be met, or it appears that there are lots of obstacles, I would really be questioning whether in fact that organisation is going to fit with your values. Just because you get offered a job doesn't mean to say that that's going to be the right job for you. So it's always about where your values sit, what's above the waterline and what's below the waterline. And so really an organisation who sees you as an individual, sees the value in you, should without consideration be meeting your needs, whether it's to do with accessibility, rainbow culture, whatever. So that comes back to you and being able to back yourself that if it doesn't feel right, it probably isn't.
Trust your gut. Love that.
Yep.
Anyone else want to add to that? I think very succinct. Another question coming through the chat. How can I possibly get a job as a UI or UX designer when all my Seek applications are going unheard and unseen? What should I do? And there's a couple of layers to that as well. So I have neither connections in New Zealand or experience. I moved to New Zealand the year before lockdown. Yeah, basically a little bit lost in need of help and direction. Well, I think it's a great question coming through the chat there. So Sam, do you want to maybe tackle this one first, and then we can lead into the rest of the panel, because there's a lot of students who probably feel that way, especially with lockdowns, that sort of thing. When you're applying and not getting anywhere, what would be your advice for those students?
Yeah, look, a really good question, especially as a new migrant into New Zealand society. It is, look, reach out to, we have careers officers that, have some connections, your lecturers. There's a whole raft of different people, certainly within the Educational Institute, and I'm sure my fellow panelists will have other ideas, but we are here as careers and employment services on campus to follow through with that, as well as our lecturers, and it's not easy. It's not easy when you don't have a network of people, but just keep asking, keep reaching out, keep trying. I know that's easy to say, harder to do. You being on this forum today is a really good sign that you're looking for connection. I'll pass it over to my fellow panelists.
Yeah, I would like to add that a big part of the job that we do with organizations, and I 100% agree with what Sam just said. When you're a migrant, I was a migrant 10 years ago. When I arrived here with very fancy qualifications, I was applying to many jobs. I was not getting any job. And something that's very interesting was this notion of Kiwi experience. I'm not hiring you because you do not have Kiwi experience. So a big part of being an ally now that I am in this position is I go with these big companies. And something that I ask them is, are you asking for Kiwi experience? And it's funny because all of them promised me, no, we do not ask for this. And I was like, I think probably you need to check with your HR department because reality is telling you differently. And that's what we do, is we try also to make employers aware of all these barriers that happen. By the way, just a couple of months ago in my area, I hire a UX designer, a person from Iran who had no experience in New Zealand. And she told me her story about this. So I cannot but empathize with this case. My suggestion is keep on applying, try to find new ways to showcase your value, to connect with the organization, and tell the parts in which you believe, highlight the parts where you believe you can make the difference for that organization. Just remember, right now, we have a shortage of workers, so it is a good moment to actually try and be brave in how you showcase yourself.
100%, and especially if UX, UI design are very high in demand needs in New Zealand and across the world, really. A quick tip and a cheeky little plug as well. Possible, we power a jobs board called Grad New Zealand. So I know that there's jobs on Seek and other traditional job boards, but they're kind of built for more people who've got experience, like the rest of the panel. For students, we've got a dedicated job board where you can search, find, apply for work. based on your qualification as well. And I know that there's dozens of jobs on there right now that are hiring UX students and grads. So feel free to check that one out. Sarah, anything else to add on that front?
No, just what I would just say is, so you said you're a migrant. I know that at the moment a lot of jobs are saying if you don't have residency or if you're on a student visa, it's really tough just because of the global situation. But if that's not the case, then what I'd completely agree what the panel have said. Identify again, and I'd go back to what I probably said, identify maybe the type of industry for UX that you're particularly interested in, or the type of organizations. Also, don't ever underestimate the importance of your network. So even though we're in 2021, actually, many people still get opportunities through their networks. It's a really good idea if you can to sit down and maybe write out a list of your circle of influence. So people that you know really well, start to talk to them about what you're doing, what you're looking for. You just don't know who might be out there. I'm a little bit of a believer in the stars aligning sometimes, and so I would do that, and just really back yourself, show how you can add value, your point of difference. If you are an immigrant, your point of difference is probably going to be that you speak maybe 1 or 2 or 3 different languages to me, and so again, be really proud of that point of difference.
Love that. And just staying with yourself, Sarah, there was a question. Oh, let me try and find it. It was around prejudices and stereotypes in the workplace.
Yep.
So, for example, people thinking that autistics don't have empathy, for example. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So that basically comes back to personal bias. We all carry personal bias, whether we like it or not. And so really, again, it's about being able to demonstrate yourself by just being who you are. Don't be anyone different. And so I guess if you're talking about yourself and you are on the neurodiverse spectrum, again, probably unless you necessarily have said that, there's no need for anyone to even really know that. I know some neurodiverse people that certainly miss some of those social cues, so we can all continue to learn. Again, I wouldn't worry too much about the negative notions that you might have heard from other people or organizations. And again, if you feel that that's what you are getting from your initial interaction or dealings with an organization or a person, again, maybe that's just not the right fit for you. You want to be somewhere where you're going to be supported, you're going to be respected. I love working with neurodiverse. They are so creative, just think so differently. You're not meant to have favorites, but I do. So that's what I would say. Back yourself.
Love it. Guillermo and Sam, I'm conscious of time and that we're unfortunately running out. I feel like I could be on this panel for hours. Guillermo, and do you want to talk about just prejudices in the workplace and yeah, the challenges that maybe people and especially students, going into the corporate world for the first time might face, and how to deal with that as well?
Sam, do you want to go first? Sorry.
Sorry, Guillermo. Yeah, do you want to go first?
Yeah. Okay, can you repeat the question? Because there was a little bit like a noise here.
Yeah, apologies. So I was just asking around the prejudices in the workplace, and when students are applying for work and when they land on the job for the first time, how to sort of tackle that on, just in the workplace in general.
Something that I think is changing, it's slowly changing in New Zealand, is the fact that now we are creating safer spaces for everyone to speak about their differences, kind of in a non-judgmental way, and that's something that I always invite people to do. Normally, when someone joins my team, the first thing that I say to that person is, look, You and I are totally different. Sometimes I am a creature from a different country. I was educated differently. And at some point, something that I'm going to say probably is going to make you feel uncomfortable, or you're going to feel offended, something like that. If that happens, please tell me. Because if you do not tell me, I am not going to be able to correct that. So starting with this idea that we can all make mistakes, and it works both ways, is very important if you already landed a job. So creating a space where you can actually speak your mind without being judgmental is probably my best advice. And I think people get it, and people really can become curious about, why is this person different? Why do you see the world in a way that I don't? And in a way, that's the essence of diversity, because that is a window to learn something new.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I've been in, I suppose, personally in situations where you do face that, and Sarah referred to it, whether it be discrimination, prejudice, or unconscious bias. I think for me, going into maybe your first role out of tertiary or out of school, being prepared, being punctual, you can be proud of who you are, and generally don't let your guard down. You always feel like you're being assessed, or you're on trial. But I find, and Guillermo said it well, having a safe space where you can engage with sometimes people who have a different attitude, who might not have the background that you do. I've always found as well, just asking questions. Sometimes that's a lot less threatening to that person. If they don't understand something, can I help you understand? It's just being in an engaging way, which is positive, constructive, and demonstrate your ability to do the job, because that's what people ultimately will judge you on, whether it's the person with the bias, the person without the bias. They'll say, hey, that guy turned up, or that person turned up. They were prepared. They turned up early. They were always punctual. They presented themselves well. They asked good questions. They worked hard, and they were honest and diligent in their work. I think ultimately those things are going to be important in terms of how you progress and how you feel comfortable in a work situation.
Amazing. Thanks so much for sharing. I think that's a beautiful note to tie things up on, actually. So we are out of time, unfortunately. I know there's many questions in the chat of students, so apologies that we didn't get to all of them, but now's your chance actually to jump into the virtual booths and have a chat with, so there's a bunch of employers online. I believe that B-Lab and Diversity Works as well, you have virtual booths as well, if students want to jump in and continue having a chat with the teams as well. But yeah, on behalf of the team at Prosper, it was absolute pleasure having this panel online. It was a really healthy discussion. As I said, I feel like we could be here for hours answering student questions here. So yeah, thank you once again, and we'll tie things up. One quick note, actually, when you, as I said, so now's the time to jump into the employer booths. For those that do need things like transcription services and that is readily accessible via Zoom. So you'll see just in the bottom panel of the Zoom chat per se, you just click on the live transcription button, and that will start transcribing for you as well. So it's freely accessible for you there. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you all, everyone. Have a fantastic afternoon. Enjoy the rest of the fair.